What's happening, YouTube? This is Brian916. Thanks for tuning in and welcome back. So this is going to be part 3 of our What Would You Rate These Tools series, where I basically give my personal experience about a tool and simply rate it from 0 to 10 based on its performance from past experience. So as you guys know, we're all in the house right now, so this is some of this quarantine content, if you will. So let's jump in and look at the tools that I got for you guys today. But before we dive in, I just wanted to mention one side point. Okay guys, so what I have here is a mask, and in many cities you're required to wear a mask to go outside in public. And so I ordered some of these masks from a company online, and I just want to share with you guys what the mask that I was sent, and hopefully help you guys to save a little bit of money and you don't end up wasting your money on some of these masks that some of these companies are selling right now. So I'm gonna put this mask on and show you how it looks, but then I'm gonna do a close-up on this mask and share with you the company that I bought this mask from. And you probably can make this mask yourself and save yourself some money, because it looks like it was made out of just an old t-shirt. So put this mask on, and then we'll do a close-up and I'll show you basically how they made this mask. I'm like 90% sure you can make this mask yourself. Alright, this is the ridiculous mask that I was sent. I think I paid like $30 for 12 of these, and you can tell it's just a piece of like a t-shirt, just a piece of cotton from like a black t-shirt, and then they cut little slits right here for your ears. And I mean, the cuts aren't even that clean, really. Looks like anybody could do this. So if you're at home and you don't have a mask, take a good look at this mask right here, and you probably could just make this mask yourself instead of wasting 30 bucks like I did. This is a close-up on it, and you can tell it's just a cotton t-shirt, and they basically just cut out a section and then, you know, used a razor blade or some scissors or something just to cut a couple of holes right here for your ear. So if you want a face mask and you don't have one, there you go. Here's a template for you, or here's an example of one that you can make yourself, because don't be like me. I paid, I believe, 30 bucks for like 12 of these, and that's ridiculous. So yeah, hopefully I could save you guys a little bit of money with that information. Anyway, let's get into the tools. Okay guys, so the first tool is going to be this vehicle dolly by Harbor Freight. I believe it's called from their Hallmasters brand, and it's supposed to be able to dolly around 1,500 pounds or up to 1,500 pounds. Obviously there's 4 of these for each vehicle's wheel, so that you can move a vehicle sideways if you need to, and that's the whole purpose for me purchasing this tool. Back when I first got my Jeep Grand Cherokee, you guys who watch my videos know that that was my workhorse, and I used it as a shop vehicle. I used it to haul engines and transmissions around, to tow vehicles, to go on mobile service calls, to loan out to customers. It was just all around use of that vehicle. So how I first got that vehicle, my wife actually in between jobs got bored and started flipping cars, and she came across that Jeep Grand Cherokee and asked me if I wanted it because she thought it was a nice car. And so I said yeah. So anyway, I went out to the people, and I think we may only gave them like 350 bucks. It was something ridiculously low. They had got quotes for like 4,500 to repair it, and they just really didn't care about the vehicle. So you know, I towed it off and gave them 350, and they gave me the title, and that was that. I was going to do the repairs at home because I remember at that time my shop was completely booked. I had no room. It was the summertime and I was completely busy. So I wanted to take this at home, get my Jeep on it and slide it all the way to the wall as far as I can get it until I'm able to start working on that vehicle. So I purchased this to be able to do that. Sadly, this thing could not move around. 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I didn't have no success with this moving vehicles around. Maybe a little small Honda Prelude or a Honda Civic you probably could, but I just found this thing to be completely cheap and not worth the money. If you want a set of vehicle dollies, I wouldn't recommend these by Harbor Freight. They really don't do a great job. But I was able to move some things around, just not vehicles, and for that reason I'll give this a 2. So to make my point, I'll run a clip for you that I was able to use this tool to move other things around, but just not vehicles. So once again, I give this a 2. I don't recommend it. So before I put another tool down, I did sell my Jeep Grand Cherokee and got another workhorse in its place. So if you're interested to see what vehicle I ended up replacing it with, stay tuned for the bonus footage. Next up, guys, we're going to score this Williams ratchet wrench set. Okay guys, so this is my Williams offset combination ratcheting wrench set. I picked this up from Amazon a few years back, and I will say I have put a lot of miles on this ratcheting wrench set. It has been my go-to ratcheting wrench set, and I don't necessarily recommend this ratcheting wrench set. It's not the best ratcheting wrench set out there. There's a couple of reasons that I didn't particularly like it. One is going to be that the head on these ratcheting wrenches were just way too big, and it just made it kind of cumbersome to use. As you guys know, Williams is the industrial line of Snap-on, so I assumed because it's the industrial line, maybe that's the reason for having this giant head on here, is that it's made to be more durable, because some of the Williams 3/8 ratchets are indestructible. And I'll go ahead and run a clip of how great those 3/8 drive Williams ratchets are.
We're going to take this Williams and we're going to see if we can get one of these head bolts out. So we're going to put the pipe on there. Ratchet still works. Same thing, nothing's wrong with it. So let me try another one. Let's do this bottom one right here. Put it right here. Get my pipe. And there we have it. Another head bolt. So my point I'm making with this is that normally you would use a 1/2 inch to pull off head bolts.
As you guys see how strong and stout that 3/8 drive Williams ratchet was, I assumed that these ratcheting wrenches were going to be the same, but they weren't. I was able to break one of these fairly easy, and I ended up replacing it with a blue point. So if you look here, this is actually a blue point. So here's a little side-by-side comparison for you, showing you how similar the Williams and Blue Point is. Again, I broke this 10 millimeter Williams fairly easy, and I've had cheaper ratcheting wrenches that didn't break as easy. And I know that my 14 millimeter is also slipping, and I need to replace that as well. So these Williams ratcheting wrenches by Snap-on, I wouldn't recommend them. So with that being said, guys, I'm gonna give these Williams a 5. So before I bought those Williams ratcheting wrenches, I was using these Duralast ratcheting wrenches, and this is like a set from AutoZone. They don't sell these anymore. I wish they did. I would rebuy them. I put a lot of miles on these Duralast ratcheting wrenches, and they've been great. Probably one of the best ratcheting wrenches that I've ever used. So if any of you guys have used these, you know what I'm talking about. These Duralast ratcheting wrenches were great. I would score these a perfect 10, but the set has some skips in there, and when you break them, in order to collect the warranty, you gotta like go in and get a whole new set, and you need to bring all of the wrenches, even though only one's broke, so the warranty was kind of goofy. But if that wasn't the case, I would give these a 10, but because of that, I would give them a 7. But that was just an honorable mention. I love these Duralast ratcheting wrenches. Okay guys, while we're on the subject of wrenches, it's only right that I pull out the best wrench set that I've ever owned. And that's gonna be this Wright tool, Wright grip wrench set. Man, I gotta say, these are probably the best combination wrenches that I've ever bought. The fitment of these wrenches on a fastener is incredible. As you can see here, written on this 16 millimeter, it says Wright grip. I don't know if the camera could pick that up, but it says Wright grip here because here inside the opening on this wrench, if you look down in there, you can see the serrated edge or teeth, if you will, inside of there, and the way that it's shaped and designed. This thing will really grip onto a fastener. So I highly recommend this wrench set, especially if you work on European vehicles where clearance could be tight. These Wright wrench tools will be a useful tool for you if you work on European vehicles. This set really sealed the deal for me when doing a head gasket job on a Supercharged Range Rover not too long ago. I'll leave a link to that series. I did a whole series on it if you're interested in that. But anyway, I had to get a motor mount off. I didn't need to remove the motor mount from the vehicle, but I did need to get it off the timing cover so that I could pull the timing cover out. It had 4 bolts on it, 3 bolts, no problem, no clearance issues, but 1 bolt had a clearance issue where I could not slide the opening up under because the bolt was so low to the body of the vehicle, and I couldn't slip on the box end, so I had no choice but to use the open end, and it was on there pretty tight, but I used this Wright grip. I put a lot on there, and it cracked it loose, and so that really sealed the deal for me because that bolt was on there pretty tight. So anyway, I'm gonna rate these Wright tool wrenches a perfect 10. No doubt about it. I think it's worth every penny for this Wright wrench tool set, and you definitely won't regret it if you purchase it. Highly recommend it. Alright, so next up guys, I got some Tecton ratchets here. These are all the ratchets that I own from the tool company Tecton. So what I'm going to do is basically give you an overall opinion of most of the ratchets that they have. And I'm going to sort of score this as a whole and not individual ratchets. Some ratchets I think are better than another, but it'll kind of give you a feel for their ratchets in general. My favorite ratchet is going to be this long 3/8 ratchet. I've used this ratchet quite a bit. This thing has come in handy so many times when detensioning serpentine belts, and just in a situation where you need a little bit of length on it, but you don't need a breaker bar, you don't need a big 1/2 inch, but a little bit of length is needed to make the job somewhat easier. And this ratchet has a slim head, so it's sort of easy to get in there down past mechanical fans and things like that to be able to detension serpentine belts, as well as bus fasteners with this. It's a great ratchet. It's an improvement from this ratchet, which was their first one, and this ratchet was a joke. I popped this ratchet easy. The ratcheting, excuse me, mechanism wasn't nearly strong enough to handle a ratchet of this length. So, but they've since improved and made a stronger gear set to be able to handle a ratchet with this kind of leverage on it. So yeah, this ratchet, I love this thing. I would give this a perfect 10 if I was scoring it individually. But like I said, I'm going to score it all as a whole. All right, so next up is going to be this 3/8 drive flex by Tecton. Right off the bat, I don't really like this ratchet at all by Tecton. I found the flex mechanism to just not really be to my liking, and I really wouldn't recommend this ratchet to a professional. I don't think it's strong enough. I found when using it, when putting it in a flex position, it is somewhat of a locking flex. So when I put it in a certain position to get it on a fastener and put a little pressure on it, the head would go back on me. And so of course I tightened up the set screw. It did help a little bit, but I still found it to be extremely flimsy, and I wouldn't recommend this ratchet. So if I was to score this individually, I would probably give it a 1. It's not a good ratchet in my opinion. Now next to it is the straight 3/8 drive ratchet by Tecton, and this ratchet is a different story. I like this ratchet. I definitely recommend this ratchet. It has good enough length on it to get the job done. It's fine tooth, so if you find yourself in a tight situation, you can still work with this tool and still get that bolt loosened up with just a small incremental movement, enough to get in there and take it out by hand. So I found this ratchet to be a good ratchet, and if I was to score this individually, I would probably give this ratchet an 8. So same thing on a quarter flex. Don't like it. Found it to be too flimsy. This roto head ratchet, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this ratchet. It's just as good as any other roto head ratchet on the market. So I would definitely score this about an 8 as well. My only gripe would be the handle. It's kind of big on it. So you know, quarters, it's better to have a nice slim quarter to get it in the tighter spots. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with this ratchet. Sure, it's just as good as any of the other ratchets of this style. Next up is going to be the second most used ratchet that I use by Tecton. It's just going to be these two right here that I probably use the most. And the reason for me using this ratchet quite a bit is, actually, you know what, I'll run a clip before I explain it. Alright, so you want to find a decent length on it. You want an extension, probably like a 3-inch extension with a deep 10mm quarter. And if you got one of these ratchets with the rotating head on it and a quarter, you should use this one. So once you break the bolt free, you could just spin it all the way out by rotating the head, because you can't get 2 hands in there. So you can get this in scenarios where you can only get 1 hand in there, and it happens in auto repair, and it's annoying, but it happens where you can't get 2 hands in there to stop the ratchet so that you can spin it back the other way. You only can get 1 hand in here. This one won't fit, so what do? I'll go ahead and bust the fastener loose, and then with this rotating head, I could just spin it until the fastener is loose enough to then go in and get it by hand. So I use this quite a bit in tight situations where I only could get one hand in. Next up are these stubby ratchets here by Tecton. I don't really use these ratchets that much. I've used a quarter the most, but I don't really use them that much, so I can't really say too much about them. They're just, you know, stubby, so they're just small stubby ratchets. You're not going to really put a lot of torque on these. I mean, it's a step up from a palm ratchet pretty much, so you're not going to really do too much torquing on a ratchet like this. You know, it's just to get in a tight spot and run a bolt down or run a bolt in. The next step is going to be this composite material ratchet, and I will say this ratchet is pretty comfortable. I don't find myself reaching for it too much. I have worked with it. I made myself work with it and went through like a couple jobs with it just to get a feel for it. It's not my favorite ratchet, I'll tell you that. I don't think the gear sets in here are that strong. I think if you put too much on this ratchet, it'll end up popping. Yeah, this ratchet, I don't really care for it too much, but it does work. And because it is comfortable, I would give this ratchet a 5. So all together, judging the Tecton ratchets, I would probably give these ratchets probably a 6. I'm not the biggest fan of Tecton's ratchets. I do like a lot of their other stuff, but I really don't like their ratchets too much. Really the only thing saving it from being a lower score, in my opinion, is this great long 3/8 drive. And they also make a 1/2 inch that's long like this. That's really great. And this rotating head ratchets. And this group of ratchets by Tecton, these two are the only ones keeping the score from dropping a little bit lower. So yeah, anyway, that's my score on the Tecton ratchets. I give them a 6. Alright, next up guys, I got a black Kobalt knife and I got a red Milwaukee knife here. These two utility knives are pretty good knives, and the reason why I wanted to do a video and rate these is because I actually had a Harbor Freight knife, which would be right here, but I destroyed it because it was so cheap I almost cut my hand open with it. So reason why I'm doing this is to say, if you have a cheap utility knife, throw it away, buy a better quality utility knife. They're not all the same, which I thought, but I learned the hard way that they're not. So when you open a knife, you can see that there's some type of restraint system to hold the razor blade in place. Okay, so when you slide the razor blade in, it's gonna lock in place. So depending on what system that knife uses to retain this knife is going to depend on the quality of the knife. So as you put pressure on that knife and you pull forward, well, it's trying to pull that blade out. So this restraint system has to really hold it in place. Same thing with the Kobalt. It has a nice restraint system as well. And the Harbor Freight knife that I had a very cheap restraint system, and the knife came out while I was putting a lot of pressure on it, and I almost sliced myself pretty bad. So I barely dodged a bullet on that one. Could have been way worse. So that's why that knife is not here. Otherwise it would be. It went in the garbage. I don't even want to look at that knife. So to rate these knives, I will give the Milwaukee a perfect 10. I'm gonna give the Kobalt an 8. And the only advantage that this one has is you can actually store extra blades with this knife. So you can see, you can open it up here and put a couple of extra blades in there if you need to take this knife with you on a drywall job or something like that, or you need to take it with you on some type of mobile repair, and you know, and your knife goes dull on you, you have a couple extras there. So, and then the Kobalt, it doesn't have that feature to be able to store a couple extra razor blades. So otherwise I would probably score it a perfect 10. The Harbor Freight knife gets a 0 and it's dangerous. Don't buy it. But that's my score on these. 10 on this Milwaukee knife. Give it an 8 on this Kobalt. Alright, next up guys, I got some ball-peen hammers from Snap-on. These are the dead blow ball-peen hammers that have sand in the head or pellets, whatever they put in there. Right off the bat, I'm gonna score these bad boys a perfect 10. This is my go-to hammer. This hammer has seen extremely heavy use. This hammer has seen a lot of use. It's probably one of the better hammers that you can buy, especially for like an automotive application, because this material is chemical resistant. And a lot of hammers, and people cry about it, but I really don't recommend wood hammers for automotive use. I have wood hammers. I've used wood hammers for automotive use, but it's really not the best hammer to use for automotive use. The chemicals will get into the wood of the hammer and it'll make it soft, and then you miss your target and you hit, you know, where the wood is soft, and the head comes flying off of the hammer, or it gets splintered and mushy. It's just not a good idea for automotive. Now, if you're doing engine rebuilding and you know you need to pound some pistons down into the bore, then yeah, a wood hammer would be great, and I do use wood hammers for that. But for everything else, these are the hammers that I use. It doesn't matter how oily my hands get, or how much brake fluid or transmission fluid or motor oil, gear oil gets on these. It's pretty much chemical resistant. Also, the head is like one piece. You don't really have to worry about this thing going flying off. It's sort of like one piece, a part of this whole hammer here. So yeah, these things are great. Not to mention it has the dead blow in it, so there's like very little recoil or bounce back when you strike an object with these. These are really good hammers. Like I said, both of these hammers have seen heavy use. Definitely give them a perfect 10. Out of all Snap-on tools, I really do like their hammers. Not to mention they're extremely comfortable. Snap-on sure does know how to make comfortable tools. I found the Snap-on hammers, the dead blow ball-peen hammers, to be more comfortable than some of the other tool truck brand dead blow ball-peen hammers. But yeah, so anyway, I give these Snap-on hammers a perfect 10. Alright guys, 2 more tools before we get out of here. Next up is going to be this impact gun by Harbor Freight. This is from their earthquake line. We know with dealing with Harbor Freight's tools, there's only going to be 2 categories of tools. You're going to have complete junk and waste of money category with Harbor Freight, or in that category like a one-time use tool, or on the other side you could have like a mediocre tool that's like overhyped. So that's pretty much the only 2 categories that they have. Nothing is really that exceptional there, but I will say this is the only tool that I've found that Harbor Freight makes that's exceptional. This thing packs a punch. It has a great battery life to it. I've never bought a new battery. I've been using this for 2 years, and I've been using the same battery ever since. I did think that it was going to be cheap initially when I bought it, and I thought I might have wasted my money, but I didn't. This thing has been a great tool. I've done a lot of work with this tool. I've taken Honda crank bolts off, lots of lug nuts, subframe bolts, head bolts, you name it. This thing packs a punch. This is like one of the only tools. There may be some others, but this is one of the only tools that I own from Harbor Freight that is an exceptional tool. It's usually either junk or overhyped, you know, regular or acceptable tool. But this one finally, they finally made a tool that was exceptional in my opinion. Is this earthquake tool. So if I had to rate this tool, I'll give it a 9.5. Pretty close to 10. I would take a half a point away because it's not brushless. But other than that, this thing definitely gets a 9.5. It's an exceptional tool. It is a bit overpriced in my opinion. I think you're probably better off going to Milwaukee route. I think since I've bought it, they have lowered the price some, but when I first bought it, this thing was like pretty much like $300 and something once you buy the warranty with it. So back then it was definitely overpriced, but I think they have gone down in price since then, since 2 years ago. So at the price point that it is now, I think it's worth it. It does pack a punch. It's a good tool. All right, guys. Next tool is going to be this Launch CRP 129 mini professional scan tool. I really do like this scan tool. It's a pretty decent scan tool. It does have communication with multiple modules. You could communicate with ABS, SRS, of course the engine and transmission. Also believe you can reset certain oil lights with this. It doesn't power on unless you plug it in, so that's a negative. Otherwise I would turn it on and go through it. It's powered through the OBD port, which definitely is a negative in my opinion. Let's see, but what else? You could get live data in this thing. You know, be able to check a vehicle's fuel trim, if you got a lean code and things like that. It's a pretty handy tool. Now, do you want to go on here and try to graph a voltage signal? No. It does have graphing capabilities, but this is not the tool you want to use that for. It's very slow. I've plugged it in and graphed an O2 sensor on this thing and unplugged the brake booster to see what type of response I would get from the tool, and it took forever to translate to the tool. So it's definitely not a tool that you want to use to do any type of like voltage graphing. There's better tools to be able to diagnose in that area, but to read codes, get a definition of a code, check out you know, ABS issues, get a transmission code, a body module code, or go in and reset an oil light or something like that. It's quick, it's easy. It has this rubber coating on it, so if you drop it, you don't have to worry about it shattering or anything like that. I've been able to diagnose using this. It also has vehicle specific information, so you can go and read a factory code on this if you're dealing with like a European vehicle and you need like a factory code. It has factory code as well as generic, so it's not just generic OBD2. You can go in and select the vehicle to get a factory specific code as well. Yeah, it's just an all-around a decent scan tool, just for, you know, light diagnosing, to check fuel trim numbers, to check engine coolant temp numbers, to check RPM numbers, to see if the vehicle is in open or closed loop, things like that. It'll work great for that, but graphing like voltage signals and that type of diagnosis, this is not the way to go for like very obscure drivability issues. I wouldn't use this to diagnose that, but just your basic ABS problem, your basic, you know, airbag light, your basic check engine light, check transmission light, that type of stuff, just as a starting point, this is pretty good. So anyway, if I had to score this tool, I'll definitely give it a 7. Alright guys, well that's how I score all these tools. That's my 2 cents from my experience over the years of working with these tools. You guys stay safe, stay healthy, be positive. This is Brian 916. See you on the next one. So many of you guys know this vehicle. This is my 2003 Jeep Grand Cherokee that I use as a workhorse, as a shop vehicle, as a loaner vehicle. I've loaned it to customers, I've loaned it to family members, I've loaned it to Des the Auto Tech. It was a parts runner. I've towed vehicles with it, picked up engines and transmissions from recyclers and dismantlers with this. You name it, this was my workhorse vehicle slash loaner vehicle. So as I said in the video, my wife was flipping cars and came across this vehicle. It didn't look this good when we first got it. I did fix it up a bit. But the body was always in good shape. It was always clean. It had good Bridgestone tires on it when I bought it. Everything was intact. It just, there was one side panel that was kind of chewed up that I replaced. And the headlights were old and dull and scuffed up. So I put new headlights in there and new tail lights in there. Also, I put that antenna on the passenger side there. I replaced that antenna with a much shorter antenna because the stock antenna was ridiculously tall. And then I put some black lug nuts on there, painted the calipers the same color as the rims, and put some suspension parts on there and a cold air and a flow master. So all together into this vehicle, I bought the vehicle for $550. I put about $1,000 in like cosmetic upgrades into it, and then to actually fix the problem with the vehicle, because obviously it's a 4.7, so you know it had a drop valve. I paid $900 for machine work and parts, fluids, everything to get it back together. So all into this vehicle, I was into it $2,450. And I drove it for, I want to say 5 years before I sold it. And I turned around and I sold it for $4,500, and I replaced it with another vehicle. So I'm going to run this video clip here. This is the video clip that I put on Craigslist as an advertisement, and then after this I'll show you the vehicle I replaced it with. Okay, so this is 2003 Jeep Grand Cherokee that I'm selling. As you can see, we got brand new headlights up front. Makes for a really nice clean look. We also got some really decent tires on here. Lots of tread left on these tires. This is a Bridgestone set. All 4 tires are matching. We'll come around here and take a look inside the back here. As you see back here, we got a trunk liner in here. Here's what it looks like underneath. Still nice and clean for the most part. So we got this nice trunk liner back here. Also, all the shocks and struts work to hold up the glass. So we raise that glass up. So we got working struts here. Same thing on the tailgate. Raise it up. Nice strong struts. So here's a good look at the backseat interior. And the interior in this vehicle is in great shape, minus the driver's seat. So I'll show you that in a minute. But this seat could either be covered with a seat cover or maybe replaced by a junkyard or salvage yard seat. But the other seat's in great shape. That's really the only interior flaw on this vehicle. But let's get to the good part. Let's take a look at the power plant. 4.7 V8 that was rebuilt by myself. I'll go ahead and insert some footage of when I rebuilt the engine in this vehicle. I did it myself, so I took some video as proof. So I got the Jeep pushed all the way up against the wall. I was just waiting for a little bit of downtime to start working on it. I found this one, or my wife did, with a drop valve. So I had to rebuild the motor. But around this time, I was doing rebuilds and cylinder head jobs on these at least once a month on the 3.7s and 4.7s, because no one really wanted to do them, or they were quoting them, astronomical prices to do it. But these engines are somewhat expensive, but I was knocking these things out and made some good money on these 4.7s and 3.7s. I'm just showing the future buyer the crank is polished. I got new pistons. Like, this is gonna be a full rebuild motor. So I was just documenting that. But the machinist that I used at the time, I was bringing him so many of them that he started cutting me deals on them, and I was getting parts for cheap, the machine work for cheap. So it turned out to kind of be good for everybody. It was a good deal for everybody. So yeah, by then I had already probably rebuilt like maybe like 4 or 5 of these motors already when I was doing this one. So I kind of just knocked this one out at my home garage, and I did it relatively quick. So yeah, I was just documenting that, showing all the gaskets and parts and stuff. So if any future buyer ended up buying this Jeep, they would know for a fact that this Jeep actually does have a rebuild engine. And I'm not just saying it does, but you know, I'm actually supplying some proof. So this is what that video was. New AC lines in here that I replaced. New dryer in there, so the AC is nice and cold. There's also a new expansion valve for the AC system. Got a K&N air filter on here, which really makes for a better fuel economy and better power and acceleration. This is a California legal. This is a California legal cold air intake. As you can see here, this is CARB compliant. This stands for California Air Resource Board. So this is a California compliant cold air intake. I'm gonna go ahead and fire this thing up because we also got a high flow 40 series muffler back here. Got a little tow hitch for you too. You see this black exhaust tip. There's also a high flow muffler on here, so we'll go ahead and fire it up so you can hear that. This thing has great performance. It's been a nice car. You'll really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun to drive. So this isn't your everyday Jeep here. It's got a rebuilt engine, high flow muffler, cold air intake. Also, we got some subtle differences from other Jeeps. We got black lug nuts on there. There's also silver painted calipers that match the same color as the wheel. And that's all the way around on it. And also, if you take a look inside here, this radio is actually not a stock radio. The stock radio actually comes with a tape player. So this is an updated radio to appear to be an old radio, if you will. Here's a port here for your audio, so you can listen to music from an iPod or from your phone. So that's an AUX jack, and so yeah, this radio is not a stock radio, but it appears to be a stock radio. Underneath, there's new shocks, there's new coil springs, and the transmission's been serviced, as well as the transfer case. And there's also a sway bar replacement under there. So if you're looking for an extremely reliable vehicle, and I mean extremely reliable, with great acceleration, great power, great for towing, great for going off-road, camping, whatever you want to do, this vehicle will get you there. Please give me a call, area code 916-842. Okay, so this is the vehicle that I replaced my Jeep Grand Cherokee with. This is my new workhorse vehicle. For several reasons. For one, it's way easier to work on, and the parts are a lot cheaper and easier to come by than in a Jeep Grand Cherokee. Also, I do have a family, and this is a much better family vehicle if I do have my kids with me. So that was a major factor. And I got this thing pretty cheap at the auction. The only thing really was wrong with it was the instrument cluster wasn't working. And so I just got a rebuilt kit for the instrument cluster and basically just rebuilt the instrument cluster. It's been working great ever since. I really didn't have to do nothing interior wise. It was nice and clean already. Um, there's no rips or tears in the seat. No one smoked in this car or anything like that. It runs perfect. There's absolutely no issues with it, aside from a very small coolant leak that I haven't got around to fixing yet, which I'm thinking about doing a repair video on, whatever that ends up being. But other than that, this is a great vehicle. I do believe this vehicle may have belonged to a police officer, judging by some of the stuff that I found in the back of the seat, like pouches and inside the glove box. So yeah, I think a police officer might have owned this vehicle, but nonetheless, everything works. All the power windows, all the seats, power seats, the sunroof, radio, everything works on this vehicle. The AC is nice and cold. So it was a pretty easy decision for me to go ahead and swap this one out. I was asking $5 grand for this vehicle, but I ended up selling a Jeep in its place, and I got $4,500 for the Jeep. So I was pretty happy about that. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this swap out. So anyway, thanks guys for watching. This is Brian 916. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I'll see you guys on the next one.